Welcome to Below the Line, where we talk about working in Hollywood from the crew perspective. My name is Skid. I'm a former assistant director and your host.
Quiet on the set.
It's Oscar season, and this is episode 4 of our series. Today, we're discussing the nominees for directing, and my guests are a panel of my assistant director friends, and Shaun, who we always introduce last. Going around the table, Bill Hardy. You're a DGA member, first AD, and sometime producer. Welcome back.
Thanks, Skid. Thanks for having me.
Glad you could make it. Next, Roger Mendoza. You're a DGA member and currently working as a second AD. Nice to see you again.
Hi, Skid. How you doing?
Doing okay. And finally, Shaun O'Banion, who is still not a member of the DGA, but is a member of the Producers Guild of America. Welcome, welcome.
Hello, Skid. Hello, guys.
Hello, everybody. Before we talk films, I want to take a moment to recognize the devastating impact of the LA wildfires with consequences for so many of our film industry friends. In fact, Katie Carroll, who has consistently been one of our panelists during award season, couldn't join us today because she's dealing with fire-related concerns. To all of our film industry friends, we see you. Okay, let's get into it. The 5 2024 films nominated for achievement in directing are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Emilia Pérez, and The Substance. We're going to discuss them in that order, and spoilers are possible, so consider this a warning. Apologies in advance if I mangle the pronunciation of anyone's name. First up, Anora, directed by Sean Baker.
The one thing I said was, I'm not really in the mood for a hooker with a heart of gold story. And the reaction I got from my sister was, no, it's not that. It's not that. I think it is that. It is okay.
This is going to be an unusually short episode for us this year, I think.
I liked the Florida Project from that director. I felt it felt very real to me. This was in a similar vein. It felt like he'd put a lot of non-actors in there. Maybe one of them, clearly the Academy has recognized. I don't know if he's a professional actor, but yeah, it felt at certain times monotonous to me. It was like, where are we going? Like, how many different times are we gonna have to hear her scream, "He's my husband, we're married"? And I was just kind of like, let's move along now. We understand how she feels, we understand what they want, and let's keep moving forward. And so for me, I'm not even sure how long the movie is, but it felt very long to me.
Oh, it is almost 2.5 hours. Yeah. I think it felt
So
that.
there you go.
Yeah, I that was my bare minimum judgment. I laughed a lot. I was engaged, but my life wasn't changed. I'm encouraged by everybody remembered their lines. I'm sorry, that's horrible. That's the I shouldn't use that one.
No, I mean, I thought, she was Mikey Madison, who plays Anora, was quite good. I didn't even realize that she was like the lunatic that DiCaprio blowtorches in the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I didn't even connect that that's that same girl, so I thought that was pretty impressive. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, some of it just felt like, once we get in the Cadillac and we're driving around, it's like, okay, we're on this mission now to find this kid. And the whole time I'm thinking, go back to the strip club. He's clearly going to be at the strip club. It takes like 40 minutes for them to go, maybe we should go to the strip club because her friend calls her. So, there was just a lot of it that, again, it felt very real to me. And I thought all of the performances felt very real. But it wasn't ultimately, I finished it. I guess I could say that, I got through the whole movie, but it wasn't like I was excited throughout the process.
Roger, you've been quiet. Before I school these guys, why don't you weigh in on what you thought of it?
I like Sean Baker's work a lot. I think he does a really good job at showing marginalized communities or marginalized characters, especially sex workers. I thought it was exactly how a woman in her 20s that meets a rich guy for the first time and finally sees an opportunity and grabs it and then watches it slip out of her hands and disaster, and does everything she can to try to keep it. I thought he did a really good job at portraying that. Like I don't know if I want to say this. I'm going to say this. But my mom was a sex worker, so I grew up with somebody. I didn't find out until much later in life, right? That this was the case. But I grew up with somebody who was very much like this woman, and went through these really high highs and these really low lows, watching her situation improve and fail based on the men that she had in her life. And I thought that was a very accurate portrayal of the situation. I think he did a really good job. I think she did a wonderful job being that person. It did get a little long in the tooth with the finding the boyfriend, but yeah, that was somebody I knew, and I found it believable, and for somebody to not come from a place where they've known somebody like that, um, he did a great job. He did a great job. I thought it was wonderful. I thought it was a great movie.
I should add that the last scene in particular did work for me because to what you were saying, Roger, was this idea of she only had an understanding of her currency as being a sexualized person. And so the idea of, spoilers again, somebody being genuinely nice, like he's genuinely trying to be nice through the whole movie, and she just doesn't get it. And literally at the end, when he's carrying her suitcases up, she literally doesn't have the tools to understand how to respond to that. So she thinks I pay him back by having sex. That's what he's after.
Yeah.
And he actually wasn't. And I thought that was really beautifully portrayed in that, and particularly in that last scene.
I think he does a really good job as a director capturing those really odd, really vulnerable moments and people that are marginalized in the community. He did it with the Florida Project.
Yeah.
It's just does a really incredible job of doing that. I think he deserves a lot of credit for being able to show how those people would actually behave and bring some compassion to it when you're watching it. It could get gimmicky at times, and he does a good job. It could feel a lot more insensitive. It could feel more exploitative, but he does a really good job at keeping it even keel through the character's portrayal. Because for me, it's all her point of view, and actually feels like you're watching a cinema verite movie to some degree too. It feels like somebody brought the camera and they decided it was okay, and they're just gonna watch this whole thing unfold. We got to watch a now Maisel movie about this poor prostitutes or strippers situation.
It was a comedy.
I'm with you, Roger. I think he did a really great job in avoiding all the pitfalls of these stories. I mean, to your point, Bill, the idea of the strip with the heart of gold, which again I didn't get from it at all, as far as where he was going with that, and even the Russian oligarchs. And I think to Sean Baker's credit, right, that he is telling a story with these elements that are actually very precarious, right? Like I think it would not have surprised me if it had fallen into some of those heavier cliches or a sort of heavy-handed storytelling, just because of those elements. I think avoiding those things is actually very deft. And I'm actually on record. This is one of the few movies this year, and the only one actually of these, to be honest, that I forgot I was watching a film, and I really liked it. I think it's one of the best of the year.
I agree.
I mean, that's what he does, right? Tangerine or the Florida Project, as you were saying, Roger, the verite aspect of, I also I don't know the young man's name, but the kid who plays the guy that she marries, I don't think I'd ever seen him before. I thought he was excellent. And you spend the first part of the movie wanting him to be a good person. And when he flips it on you, you're like, oh Christ. Okay, so that's what we're doing now. But I thought the performances were fantastic throughout. I just the story and the way that it took its time to do everything, I think it could have been tightened up.
Another thing, though, I was impressed, and where I give Sean Baker credit is that it starts with her story and she meets him, and then it kind of becomes this couple's story, but never fully. And so when it comes back around to those final scenes that we alluded to, you're like, oh yes, the name of this movie is Anora, but it didn't push that the whole time. But it did feel like it was intentional about her, even though there were all these other characters. I felt Sean Baker did an amazing job of really keeping it focused and bringing it back around. That, and then when it was over, I was very satisfied with this film, very impressed.
Well, and there's also the thing about the name itself, right? Which is that the young man who's sort of ultimately pursuing her says, I like Anora. And she's like, what the hell do my name's Ani or whatever. It's like she lives within the construct of what she's created for working in that club. And she doesn't allow herself to be a human being. She's sort of just this thing. So I did respond to that as well. I thought that was quite well done.
We've got an interesting slate ahead of us. Let's talk about our next film, The Brutalist, directed by Brady Corbet. Who wants to go out first this time?
I did it last time, guys. And then you all bashed on me.
Who wants to draw fire?
It was beautiful. It's beautiful. It's hard to watch. It was brutal. I don't know how to describe this movie, honestly. I don't know where to put it on the list. I don't know if I loved it or if I didn't. That his performance was amazing. I think they did it. I don't know how to feel about this movie, honestly.
I'll put something out there and then you guys can attack me for a change.
Actually, look, Skid, let me cut you off for 1 second, because part of what I'm going to say is I honestly think that don't give away the ending, because you spend so long to get there. You know what I'm talking about?
Did you have to wait that long to get there? Was that necessary?
No. I'll let Skid go first. I just think that's something. That's my personal opinion. Do whatever you want. It's your show. As I always said, it ain't my movie, man.
We're not going to. No, I don't have any need to. I don't think I have to talk about the ending to say why I don't like this film. I think overall, here's the problem. There's all of this going on. I think there's a lot of effort, a lot of talk about how it wasn't much money and it took so long to do and all of these things, but there are no characters. They're all caricatures. Like, they're all very wide brushstrokes. Nobody is actually even meant to be a real person, in my opinion. And that's fine. But then I just don't think you need this exhausting amount of time to tell that story. If that's all you're going to do, if it's all just going to be metaphors and symbolism and the immigrant experience and how shitty America is, all of ideas that I can get behind and trying to capture, I just don't think you need this much time to do it. I think it's self-indulgent. I think every year there's a film where it's like, it's actually the filmmakers' angst that they're playing out. I think that's this film this year. And I honestly don't understand why people like it so much. Maybe one of you will tell me.
I think you worded it perfectly.
Yeah, I have to agree. I haven't really liked Brady's other films. I liked him as an actor. He started out as an actor. I actually met him once and actually felt he was a little bit pretentious, and this movie sort of felt that way to me. So I mean, he was literally wearing an ascot when I met him, and I was like, Jesus Christ.
Ascots.
So I watched the movie, and then he's turned up on all the Q&As, and he looks very different now, and he's sort of leaning into the director aspect and less the performer thing. I mean, I agree with Roger. I love that actor so much. He's playing a similar thing, Adrian Brody, to what he did in The Pianist. He's, a lot of shot of Spielman in The Pianist, the accent and all that thing. So there's already like, is he being that different? I don't know if he's being that different. He was Polish there. He's Hungarian here, but I like watching him. I think he's very watchable. In my opinion, he doesn't work nearly enough. I don't know that, again, I needed 4 hours or whatever it is to watch this story. And very often I thought, okay, like, if this were a story like The Pianist, where we knew this guy was a real person, a real architect from, coming out of the war, would I have been more invested? And I think I would have. It's the version of this is like, we're watching a made up story of the immigrant experience, and it's less powerful for me because I know it's not real. And I do agree it was beautiful. I thought even, going to the stone quarry, the marble quarry and in Italy, I was like, man, there's just some gorgeous stuff here. The image of the upside down the Statue of Liberty, which is actually the poster for the film. I was like, wow, that's you don't see that. We've never seen that before. I can't recall ever seeing an upside down Statue of Liberty, which is wild. So there's a lot of pieces in it that I thought were great. And as a whole, I was struggling.
I completely agree with 90% of what you guys have said. Like the length, absolutely, it was too long. And that was the first time I was like, how do they justify 3.5 hours based on the fact that this is not a true story? Oh, well, this is completely made up. So you have to go into it with a different mindset from the get-go there. Everybody in it is amazing. Adrian Brody is fantastic. I completely agree with you. Like I'm anything I hold against the movie is not going to count against him as far as whether or not that's the best actor, in my opinion. I was not Oppenheimer enthralled. That's where I first went. I was like, it's 3.5 hours. I couldn't turn away from the television watching Oppenheimer. And on this, it was much more of the, oh, look, the refrigerator's running. But at the same time, amazing visuals, completely engrossing performances. It just wasn't, it wanted to be something else. I think that everything, yeah, I don't want to judge the man, Brady Corbet, but, you know, I get the same kind of react based on his speech at the Golden Globes. Can't hold that against the film, but I was like, all right, calm down. All right, yeah, we get it. Yeah, it's a movie.
What did he say? I didn't see his speech for the Golden Globes. The Golden Globes are trash anyway, but still trash.
He was not wearing an ascot. He was not wearing an ascot, but he totally could have been. And that it was that kind of speech. But like no, the Corey sequence, there's so much going on in the film that I think warrants a longer runtime, but not 3.5 hours. The Italy sequence, like, you know, I had a big conversation with a close friend about where they shot Conclave, and it got me thinking, and I kept comparing it to this. I know a different movie, but I'll save that part of it. But, you know, this movie was all about the place they were shooting that doesn't actually exist. So you're not, I honestly don't know how much of it they built and how much of it was found locations, but very little probably. That's probably where I imagine.
I think the whole thing was done in Hungary. I think they did the whole thing outside Budapest, even doubling the U.S. So
did they build the whole building?
Clearly, you guys haven't listened to the episode about production design yet, so it's I'm not going to spoil it for you. Go check that one out because they talk about what they did for that. You know, before we get too far into that, though, Bill, I want to go back to something you said, and we're not because we're talking about best actor, whatever. But what do you guys think about the idea that they used AI to get the accents right?
Really?
Yeah, they took his Hungarian wasn't good enough, and so they used AI to take his voice and then another voice and to kind of make it so he sounded more authentic than he actually did. Which again, I don't want to take away from his performance, but that's on the director, right? Like, is that okay to do that?
My understanding is that they did it for the voiceover pieces where he's writing letters to his wife who's left behind for the first chunk of the movie. You know, could they probably have gotten away without it? Yeah, Hungarian people would be like, "This is terrible." The way we were, you know, look at like Costner trying to speak the Queen's in Robin Hood, but like it doesn't bother me in one sense that like I think it's just another tool. Like that's how look, it's AI is coming in many different aspects, particularly in our industry, right? So we're just all going to have to get on that train. It's going to replace some people. It's not going to replace other people, whatever it might be. Hopefully there's some human element that's involved at any point in that. And there are, you know, whether it's the WGA putting guardrails in or trying to put guardrails in, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. But I think in something like this, it didn't bother me. Like I was listening for it because I knew I had heard that, you know, and seen sort of people freaking out about it. And so when the letters are being read out as he's writing these letters to his wife, I was going, okay, so now if we get a reply from the wife, they probably did it for her too. And I was trying to catch it. And I actually heard the other person whose voice they synthesized into it was the editor of the picture, because he is Hungarian. And so they like fused their voices together. I never caught it. It sounded like Adrian Brody to me. Like I never went like, oop, that's that's computer stuff right there. And so it didn't bother me. And again, I don't think it bothers me overall because I think we just have to start learning how to adapt these tools. And the people that sort of cross their arms and stomp their feet about it are probably the ones that are going to be left behind.
I'm probably more sensitive because of all of us. I'd probably be the one that got replaced by AI on these interviews. So maybe I'm sensitive about it, but
we don't get on board with it.
I think it's a very fine line. I think it's got to be a case by case basis. It's a director's movie. If I was the actor, I'd be pretty pissed off if I hadn't been consulted. But at the same time, like you're saying, Shaun, if it's just voiceover, there's a million different little pieces to this very specific conversation that, it's where's the line? Now it's a pronunciation of a word in Hungarian, and 5 years from now, they think that actors' earlobe should be attached to the face all the way down to the bottom and shouldn't dangle. You know what I mean? Like, these are conversations that we've all been having since Phantom Menace. Since George Lucas said, I don't need any of this. Screw all of you. He wasn't facing the right way, so I'm just going to turn him. Like, it started there. And, having said that, yeah, it didn't bother me.
I mean, every Marvel movie does the same thing. Every Marvel movie digitally cuts people out and replaces them with other people. But I don't feel in this instance as long as it was still his performance and it was just giving him a little tweak for authenticity, I don't feel like it's a bad thing. And I think it's something that's going to become more prevalent. This AI is going to be everywhere, and we do have to get on board, like Shaun said.
Yeah, but that's not the only time they used AI in this either. They also used it for some of the architectural drawings to let the AI extrapolate and do some of his notes and things rather than hire a creative person to actually design it. They let the AI do it. And so I'm not saying it's not a tool, but I think there's sort of casual, what's the big deal response to that, I think is ill-guided for the filmmakers to be quite so nonchalant about the use of AI in this. And again, getting films done, yes, but should it be Best Picture? I think those things should probably cobble it for those reasons.
And you can't say, look, I had 3 hours and 15 minutes of movie to worry about. I didn't have time to worry about this. Like, well, then make the movie shorter,
Develop the characters better.
I'm working on a series now that I can't say what it is, but it's a big series for Amazon, and the art department is using AI to come up with their concept sketches and stuff. I mean, it's just going to be ingrained in everything we do from here on out, I think.
Look, I've told you guys before, I came out of college very much, no, I don't care about this video crap. We work in the film industry. And then, I never work anymore. It was a great argument 25 years ago, but, it's all going to happen no matter what any of us say here, for sure.
I worked in a movie last year that did the same thing with the art department. Actually, most of the posters that they had in like a restaurant that we filmed in, it was all AI generated, but somebody still had to make all the prompts for that to happen. So somebody still had an idea what they wanted, and the AI just helped them generate it.
Yeah, and I think, but even to Bill's point, is like it opens up a whole other can of worms conversation, because whatever the AI is generating, it has scraped from other sources, right? It has scraped Google and museum websites and anything to create any kind of art. It doesn't have ideas of its own. So, I mean, there is that, but I think in regard to the Brutalist, again, it's helping with pronunciation, it's helping with language, it's helping something in the film to feel more authentic. I didn't actually know that about the art or the designs that he had supposedly done in the movie, but I mean, that kind of doesn't bother me terribly much either. But I just think if it's used sparingly as a tool, I think it's useful. If it becomes the whole ball of wax, I'm really not interested.
It's the same thing as English speaking movies. Nazis don't have British accents. It's just a different variation on that. That's just just for right now, the technology is there. So why don't we just tweak it? It's like, okay, yeah, that works for me. Honestly,
this is the position I'll take, and we'll see if it holds up next year or the year after. But it's one thing to say it's going to be used to make films. It's another thing, though, when we're recognizing films for achievement. I think we should recognize that makes it less notable from an achievement perspective, I think, if you're using AI like they're using in this case.
Well, then you sort of get into the question of like, how bad could it have been? And if, 97% of your audience is not Hungarian, would anybody else have noticed? And in that case, did they need to worry about it? You know what I mean? So like you can say to Brady Corbet on a Q&A, like, why though? So why? So you don't offend the audience from Hungary? I mean, plenty of actors have done the best that they could possibly do and sat with a voice coach and sat with a dialect coach. If he didn't get 100%, was 98% not close enough? Was 94% not close enough?
Does he have to share the Oscar if he gets it? I mean, because it's a joint performance.
Yeah,
now, right?
depending on the person, depending on the person or how much it was used in the film. I mean, I guess I don't know. It doesn't bother me that they used it to synthesize Adrian Brody's pronunciation. We're also seeing now, videos where when they release a movie to the Spanish market, for example, the mouth will match perfectly and they'll speak fluent Spanish. And I'm like, is that terrible? I don't know. Doesn't really, I think it's kind of cool.
There's another movie that we're going to talk about later that I wish would have done that.
Well, I was going to say, I knew you were going to have something. I knew you'd have something to say because I prepared a conversation on that too in my head. So let's just put a little asterisk there referring to Selena Gomez later.
Hey, spoilers for the movie, but don't do spoilers for our own podcast. Okay, let's wait till we get there. All right, I know you guys are talking about the Bob Dylan performance, right? Let's move on to that. Third movie on our list, Complete Unknown, directed by James Mangold.
It's probably not going to win much of anything, but to me, of this group, it feels like the most movie. I'm a James Mangold fan. I'm a Bob Dylan fan. I'm a fan of Timmy Chalamet. I thought Monica Barbaro was fantastic. The way that the period was presented, I wasn't alive in that period, but it felt authentic New York to me. I thought it was gorgeously designed, gorgeously shot by Faden Papamichael, and I just really enjoyed it all the way across the board. Really, really liked it.
Agree. It was beautiful. I think it was the prettiest of the group. It was the most well executed of all of them, in my opinion.
For sure.
From the performances to every choice that they made, the sound, the production design, I thought it was perfect. I think it's probably his best movie so far.
Yeah, which is saying a lot because he's made some great movies.
Mangold.
Yeah.
Interesting, nominated for sound, not nominated for production design. It did not make that list. What else did it pick up on the technical side for us?
Not sure.
Animated feature. No, I'm just kidding. That's not on that list. I'm feeling like it is underrepresented given all the expertise that went into it. I think it's just sound.
I didn't get cinematography.
No.
It really did feel like the most Hollywood movie. I think that like it wasn't taking any risks. It wasn't experimental in any way, but it was a good, solid biography, like a biopic. I think that those can go either way. And I've said too many times, I'm like, well, did this person have a boring life? No. Why is the movie so boring? Like this was, because I forgot I had that argument with people about Gandhi. But this was, if you can get an actor that's actually going to perform it well, and you don't have that, because once you cross that bridge, then it makes everything else work. I feel like in this kind of, when it's a biopic about a rock star or musician at all, like you got to get people with the music. That's why we're telling you this guy's life story in the first place. And that didn't bother me at all. Maybe I don't know, Shaun, you're the Dylan fan. You said I enjoy Dylan, but
no, him singing it.
Yeah,
I thought he did a fantastic job. And kind of to that point, they made a movie. I guess it was last year, or the year before, about Whitney Houston, that was called "I Want to Dance with Somebody." And the actors playing Whitney Houston did not sing the songs, which there are very few people who can sing those songs the way Whitney Houston sang, which is part of the problem. But when you watch that film, you're watching somebody lip sync and you know that, and you're less invested because you're like, I'm watching, you can see this on TikTok, people lip syncing things, you know what I mean? So like, what am I watching here? And I thought Chalamet did a fantastic job of just really everything, the intonation, the pauses. I thought he really nailed it, and not easy to do.
And it's rock and roll history. It's an important, Dylan Goes Electric is an important part of musical history, whether people realize it or not. And the fact that Dylan was folk before he was rock, I think gets lost in the history of Dylan. Kids these days. No, I think it's an important documentation too. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie and all it had to say.
One of the things that I think the film does do differently, which, if you're trying to write anything these days for any studio, you will hear the note, is he likable enough? Which they sort of Mangold set aside for this movie. We don't need him to be likable. And also there's no antagonist, really. There's no villain in this movie other than himself and the audience that doesn't want him to change what he's doing. So I think that's kind of interesting too, that they did manage to squeak this movie out of a studio without having an antagonist.
I like the film. I don't think this has anything to do with the directing. I do think, and I'm also a fan of Chalamet in general, but I do think it's very interesting. I'm glad the film confined itself to such a short period of time, because I do think by the end, the outfit that Timothy Chalamet, if you will, the Bob Dylan outfit he put on, I'm starting to see the seams come apart a little bit. I don't know that he could have done a full-length biopic about him. I think he nailed this, but if there'd been any more development of character, I'm not sure that he would have pulled it off. I think it would have started to feel fake if they'd gone much longer. But
that's an important part of doing the biopic anyways. The best ones are a specific time within the person's life, I think, too.
Yeah.
That was a good choice in choosing just that particular part of his life. I thought they picked the perfect actor to portray that. I couldn't see anybody else doing it and making it believable.
I'd be curious though, Skid, why did you think that? I mean, he had been preparing this movie, I think, for like 3 years. First, there was a scheduling thing with like Dune, and then there was COVID, and the movie was like, is it going to go? I don't know if it's going. So he had a lot of time to sort of build into that and learn the songs and learn the voice. And so I'd be curious to know where you saw those seams.
And I think he did a great job. But towards the end, it started to feel to me like more of an act than a young Bob Dylan. Like if he'd gone on much longer, I think it would have been like a celebrity impression, quite frankly. If he had tried to jump to other ages, I'm not sure I would have been as invested or that he would have come across as believable. Now, again, we didn't see that, so we don't know. But I just started to get a sense of it, to me, when I saw it, that, it's probably a good thing we're wrapping up now. I'm not going to jump ahead a decade or two.
Do you feel he did the angst really, really well? And if he went beyond the angst of creating or moving beyond his folk roots, he wouldn't have been able to be a more mature version of Dylan?
I mean, maybe in a decade they'll do a sequel and he can play him then. When Chalamet's 10 years older, we'll see.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's that too, right? He's so young still. Yeah.
I mean, there's still a lot of eras for Dylan.
Let's move on to the fourth movie on our list. Emilia Pérez, directed by Jacques Audiard. Am I saying his name right? Does anybody know?
I think so. Yeah.
It's
I
French.
think you're close.
Who wants to start in on this?
Go, Roger, go.
Man, this movie could have been really cool. I wanted to love it. There's so many like parts of it that I mean, what a good story that could have been of, cartel narcotraficante deciding that he's going to become a woman, and all the places that could have gone, especially with him coming back and deciding to insert himself back into the life of trying to help people. And it could have been deep, but it wasn't. It was, to me, the most shallow, glossed over, disrespectful to the culture, to the situations, to Mexico. I don't want to hate it, but I do. I don't think that's the way you should represent the culture. And it's the same thing as the Nazis always being English. They did give a couple of little nods. The language really bothers me whenever I watch a movie and it's in Spanish, right? Like I grew up here, so my accent in Spanish is very much English, right? So I probably sound a little bit like Selena Gomez, maybe not as bad, right? But but it did give a couple of nods, like giving Soy Saldana the Saldana the ability to be able to say she was Dominican, so that you could explain away her accent, right? But if she grew up in Mexico, she would have had a Mexican accent. That's what she said. She grew up there. There are so many good Mexican actors. Why not choose any of them? Like, why pick people that can't represent the culture? They aren't even from Mexico for a story that was so Mexican, air quotes. Aside from all that, and the way that the violence of this character's past life is glossed over, and how money can just fix everything at some point, because now I can just throw money on it, and like I've changed who I am as a human being. Now I can now be a good person. I don't think that could really happen after you being such an evil person that's disappeared so many people and caused so much chaos and sadness in a country. That was horrible. It was a horrible idea that they thought that they could get away with that, the way that they portrayed it. All the elements were there. It was just not executed in any way that was respectful. And the music sucked.
And that's what happens when the director's French and doesn't speak English or Spanish. I felt like that was obvious. When I read that as a criticism, I was like, it makes complete sense. It explains so much. Like Selena Gomez's accent was just like the least of the worries. Like I feel like that's like the same thing as making fun of the way Sofia Vergara sounds when she speaks English, probably. Like she's an American.
Sofia Vergara does a better job.
Well, yeah, I was like, Selena Gomez's voice sounds weird to me, just generally speaking. That'll be what gets. I
had to turn on the subtitles to understand what she was saying in Spanish.
But there's so much more wrong with this movie than that.
Yes.
I wanted to like it. These musicals, because I completely trashed West Side Story, and I keep thinking of that too because Natalie Wood didn't sing. That's another one of those instances. But yeah, I really want to like musicals that get nominated, and then I was like, this doesn't even feel right.
It got nominated for everything, and I don't see any instance of any. I just can't. I can't put it together. Like, why is it nominated for these technical awards? The songs to me are atrocious. Why has it got best cinematography?
And two of the 5 original songs are from this movie.
2, which means I have to watch the Oscars and listen to 2 of those songs.
I had high hopes. It's a very high concept, and it felt soap opera-y.
Yeah.
It was a telenovela. It was 100% a telenovela.
You just sound better when you say it.
But Roger, also to your point, like this is a Netflix movie. And in 2018, Netflix rolled the dice on a movie set in Mexico called Roma.
Amazing.
That had an all Mexican cast of people we'd never heard of, and the lead got a Best Actress nomination. And like, so you're watching this and you're kind of like, did they need Zoe? Did they need, like, when did Netflix start mandating, like, okay, well, we'll do it, but you have to have a couple stars in it? For this kind of movie, it's completely superfluous, right? And if anything, as you're watching it, and particularly if you're a native Spanish speaker, you're like, these people aren't, they're not authentic. It's inauthentic. And it goes back to this thing of like, in the world that we're in now, we're not casting, Cherokee people to play Inuit people. You know what I mean? Like, you can find authentic talent in the place that the thing is set and bring new people into the light.
But this director didn't even go to Mexico for research. Never mind that they shot the whole thing on sound stages in France.
Yeah.
France.
To me, the low point of the movie, I avoided watching this until the nominations came out, and it's on so many of the lists. But thank God this is not one of the songs that they'll be playing on Oscar night. But the disappeared one, all the little heads and the people, and it's to your point, Roger, it's like you're thinking that people just come together over this, like what you're doing, like this. horrible evil, and then like you're glossing over. It's like, oh my god, oh my god. This is this year's Green Book.
Without going into that character's background as to like it could have been so easy to throw in why this person felt this way. Like I'm committing these evils, but it's only because I have to. And you could have actually I thought that Emilia Perez could have been a really, really well-rounded character because such an interesting thing to explore as a human being that was a narco traficante that kills people and then decides that they're going to be different. And but it shouldn't have been just to become a woman. It should have also been, I'm going to fix the sins of my past. But she only fixes the sins of her past to make herself feel better in the most superficial way possible. It's just I mean, and I'm sorry, but Soy Saldana only knew her for a short period of time, like within the movie. The choice of her running back into her in London and then she recognizes her. How does her wife not recognize her? Her own children are like, "You smell like my father," but the wife, who's been very intimate with this person, can't even tell.
Yeah.
How is that believable?
On the issue of its popularity, it does remind me of Green Book, where people have an idea of what they think the movie is, and then people just sort of fall in like, oh, I want to support representation. And then it kind of get, no, actually, glean into their ignorance rather than actually being educated on these things. I mean, this movie offends the Mexican community, it offends the LGBTQ community, and there's nothing watching the film that makes me think those guys are wrong and calling it shit.
Yeah. You made light of a real situation that people go through all the time, and kind of dismissed it by saying she has money, she can make it better.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I hated the movie. I thought it was poorly executed. It could have been really, really great. It could have really leaned into the telenovela theme because I used to have to sit around with my grandmother when I was a little boy and watch telenovelas, and they had those elements, right? They could have really leaned into the telenovela thing, right? There, even when she came back, you could have really gone into the fact that who was Edgar Ramirez's character? Did they have a rivalry? Did he want to get rid of him because he was in love? Like it could have really, all these things could have been great. Somebody could have recognized her and come after her. Like I thought the woman that she starts dating at some point in the movie after she opens the foundation, I thought that woman was going to come for revenge because she recognized who she used to be, and that would have been way more telenovela. But instead, she falls in love. That would have been great. But they didn't lean into those things hard enough. And then on top of
because the director doesn't know them and apparently didn't research them.
it just felt disrespectful. And I understand that they're Soy Saldana and is Dominican American, and Selena Gomez is what, third or fourth generation Mexican American, and I can't remember her name now. The actress that plays Emilia Pérez is Spanish. So yes,
Gascon.
okay, I get that, but like Sean said, Roma included all the facets of the Mexican community and did it really, really well. The person that thought that this was a great idea was an awful human being, and and, and the fact now that it has so many Oscars is going to allow people to think that it's okay to continue to do these kind of things.
Anybody else want to put a knife in this thing? I mean, we're on Ides of March territory at this point, but all right, let's move on to the fifth film on our list, The Substance, directed by Coralie Farge.
I loved it.
Uh,
Yeah, I was very excited in the idea of a artistic horror movie, and that was exactly what I got. Like, it was over the top in all the right places and had a message that's complete. I really like everything about it. I just, the ending was so disgusting at the same time that I just start getting icky every time it starts flashing before my eyes. So without giving any of that too much away, it was very intellectual. It got its point across with its the stylings with the camera, just the two performances of the same actress, same character. Oh my God, I'm totally lost in my explanation. It all sounds like shit now, but I really liked it.
I don't know how much of that I can fix, Bill. Sorry, some of that just going to be in the podcast.
I love that a body horror movie is got a nod for best director. I wish it would have been Cronenberg.
That's actually, I had multiple David Cronenberg thoughts throughout the entire thing. It's that same icky creature.
That's the thing. Cronenberg or Carpenter.
Yeah.
And you could feel the influences all over her of those, these 80s classics like The Thing or like The Fly.
Fly.
And you're just, I mean, I was digging it too. And I don't even like, I mean, I like those movies and I don't go see sort of horror movies really, certainly in a theater, but I really liked it. I thought it was a blast. What you said though, Bill, by the end, I was like, oh man, maybe we're going a little too far.
Yeah, it was over the top there, but it's still, like I keep thinking of Dennis Quaid in general, like that entire character was completely over the top. It's like, okay, well that's where we are. And then especially once you start dipping into the Cronenberg universe kind of thing, the entire bathroom set, what was presented there, how much of the movie takes place in that bathroom, and the way it was shot, really, bathrooms haven't been so scary since I walked out of them. No, that's the wrong thing to say.
Yeah, but yeah, the and the performances, as you were going to say, Margaret Qualley and Demi Moore. I mean, fantastic what they were doing and
Yeah, it was brave.
how they committed to it and really leaned into that. And also, I have to say, you mentioned Dennis Quaid, but him eating shrimp is almost as disgusting as the end of the movie.
I think for me, interesting on this one, I liked it. But where the beginning of the movie and the sets and the sort of the detail and the props and all the little, even the way it was put together, I was really, really into it. I got a 5-point scale. I gave it a 4. In the end, though, that didn't work for me. I thought it went too far, or alluding to some of the things you're talking about, Shaun, and didn't really have a very interesting point for me at the very end. So I thought the ending was like a 2. And so this movie averaged out for me. I gave it a 3. I didn't love it. I was loving it. And then in the end, I think I needed more for it. For all I needed, I don't know, it was so exciting all the way through. I just somehow needed the ending to be more revelatory or interesting than it was for me. So it took it down a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree. There was something about the ending that almost felt like we're looking at an episode of Black Mirror or something, where we've just gone so far off the deep end. And I was like, I don't know if it works for me in that way. Kind of what you said, if it's connecting fully to the first part, because the first part sets up this whole thing so beautifully and so well done. And then when you get to the end, it's like, well, now we're just playing around.
I wish the script would have given us a little bit more about the company that makes the substance. If that would have come around at the end, it would have filled in that what I feel was lacking at the end of the movie.
Now, we'll start going down the writing rabbit hole, but from the sci-fi perspective, I completely agree with you. But as far as the analyzation of this, of the woman having in Hollywood, just the story about that particular character, I think it keeps it focused on that too. Of course, the movie is called The Substance.
Well, those are our 5 nominees. Let's compare it to other films that came out that aren't on the list. Worth noting that the Directors Guild has this same slate, except instead of The Substance, Edward Berger got nominated for Conclave. The other 4 are on the DGA list as well. Guys, other films that you think could have been on this list? Any other film that you would have replaced? Any film could have replaced Emilia Pérez, but specific films that should have been nominated this year?
Call me crazy, but Civil War was my pick. I was a huge fan of Civil War this year.
You're crazy, Bill. You're crazy.
I think Alex Garland is brilliant, and anything he does, I want to watch over and over again. But
all right, well, I've said enough about how I disagree with you this time, Bill. I hope you're enjoying your last time on the podcast. With these opinions, I'm not sure we can keep going to that well. But anyway, what was on other people's top of the list?
Roger, you got any? I'm looking through the releases right now.
But it's more for performances than I don't know if it would actually fit in there, but I really like The Apprentice.
I have not seen The Apprentice.
I wish we had gotten a screener for it.
Oh, did you not?
Right. No screener on that.
We got on PGA, but I haven't watched it yet. Um, I know the movie didn't do well, but they nominated, I think, George Miller for the first Mad Max, or not the first, but the new Mad Max. And I actually liked Furiosa better. I thought it was a cooler movie. I liked the breaking it up into chapters. So I probably would have put that in for direction. I thought it was pretty great.
Sean, that's one, again, when we're talking about performances, I didn't Anya Taylor-Joy, who I am a big fan of normally, I felt like she was doing a Charlize Theron impression the whole time. Like it's tough to go backwards with stuff when people are trying to project what something's going to be forward. And they didn't. I enjoyed it. That was on my favorites list, but I don't know that it was amazing. And I didn't think it was better than the first one. That's interesting. I'm being nicer to you than I've been to Bill. I'm not sure why. I think maybe because I'm expecting you to come back. But
no, but there's not a lot to be honest in terms of nomination type stuff. I've been off the mark for years now. A lot of the films that are usually my favorites of the year don't make it onto end of the year list. I think back to like there was a movie called A Most Violent Year that J.C. Shander directed with Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain, and I thought, man, that movie's gonna like sweep, and it got nothing. Even going back to like Moneyball. Moneyball is one of my favorite movies of that year and might have gotten a couple nominations, but it wasn't really a part of the conversation anywhere. So most of these, I find myself at the end of the year going, really? Emilia Pérez? I don't, like.
Kid, you'll love it. It's not since the year. It was the year that Mother exclamation point came out, and I put that as my number one movie that I knew that I was just on a different wavelength.
But if that movie came out this year, it might have been on the list,
Actually, I'm going to change my movie that should have been on there, or I'm going to add one. I think Wicked should have been on there.
we can have a conversation about that. Why do you think? What about Wicked?
It was great. The performances were great. It was a musical, yes, but it was a very well-made movie all the way around.
That I agree with 100%. I think all of the technical stuff, I think where it's showing up, it's worth the conversation. Podcast plug, I interviewed the editor and the choreographer together, and they talked about how it came together. That's a great episode last season if folks haven't caught it. I wish I lived in the alternative universe where John Chu is given the assignment of making one movie rather than two movies. I would just like to have seen all of that talent and energy maybe a little more focused. I'm not familiar with the stage play or the book, and I thought it was a little long in the tooth, the 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Totally agree. A
little long.
And then it's only part one, right? I would have liked to have seen them accept the assignment, and I think whatever they'd done would have been fantastic. I think in this case, it just feels a little bit like I can see the hands of the studio on it, right? The studio fingerprints feel like it's on this production in a way that I don't know that I would make it the best. But I think it's tremendously done what we get.
I have to agree with you, Skid. I think it was too long, especially for being a part one. And for me, not knowing the Broadway show or the book or anything, I didn't love all of the songs. I think there were 3 like absolute showstoppers in there that I was like, these are just great songs. Like I would listen to these songs. And I have a 5-year-old who liked the movie, so I probably will be listening to those songs, but more than I care to. But I don't really like modern musicals, which, even talking about Emilia Pérez, I didn't know before I hit play that it was a musical, so that sort of shocked me. And then I was like, oh, okay, all right, well, let's see. But I did enjoy Wicked. I was like, this is pretty fun, and I was glad to see Ariana Grande got a nomination from the Academy because I thought she killed it. Fantastic.
So I said before, Anora was one of my favorite films this year. There were 2 other films that I put on this level. For me, Dune 2, I would have liked to have seen here. I really enjoyed the second part. I'm sorry Katie's not here, that we can talk about, splitting movies like we finished up our conversation from last year. And I really like Challengers. I thought Challengers, I'm surprised that it's not getting love on the director side of things, because I thought that movie really, really came together. So those 3 for me. I think those other 2 films, I would have put either one of them in here instead of Emilia Pérez and The Brutalist, obviously. See, I've got room. There's 2 spots on my list, so I can put both of mine.
I'd go with both of those 2. I didn't know what to expect from Challengers, but I really enjoyed it.
I think that's a good take. I agree.
Bill, you going to agree? If you agree with me, you can come back next year.
I guess I silently agreed. Well, I think I was kind of nodding my head. It didn't. Yes, Mr. Skidmore, sir.
Dune Part 2 and Challengers. Bill's on board.
I haven't even seen Challengers yet, but that sounds awesome.
All right, you've got our recommendations. On that note, we'll call it a wrap. Thanks, guys. This was fun.
Thanks, kid.
Thanks very much, Skid.
Thanks, Skid.
And Katie, we missed you. We missed you.
Definitely.
As previously mentioned, this is the 4th of 13 Oscar episodes. And for any new listeners, I hope you'll stick around for the ride. The plan is a new episode every 3 days until the ceremony on March 2nd, so subscribe now if you haven't already, so you can catch them all. As always, I appreciate your feedback. You'll find my contact info at our website, belowtheline1word.biz. That's B-I-Z. Closing credits, thanks to Curtis Five for our music and John Wan for our logo. The logo is available on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers at redbubble.com. To all of our listeners, I appreciate you. Please rate us wherever you get your podcasts and tell your friends. Thanks again from Below the Line.